Now we move to the speaker number one, who will speak to us on bonded labor abolition, Dr. Sam Jebin Manohar. I will introduce him quickly. Dr. Sam Jebin Manohar is an organizational development and social transformation consultant with over 4 decades of experience spanning industry, academia, and the social sector. He holds a PhD in social work from Bangalore University and a master's in social work from Madurai Kamaraj University. His work has focused on leadership development, organizational effectiveness, and advancing social initiatives through both corporate and non-profit platforms. He's a published author in the field of social development and has been a resource person at business schools and social work colleges across India. We invite Dr. Sam Jebin Manohar to speak on the topic bonded labor abolition. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Joyce. Yeah, it's really a pleasure to hear you introducing me. In fact, I always felt that I would be a square peg in a round hole in this famous speakers panel who are very relevantly working on the areas of tribal welfare, caste system abolition, and coming from a bonded labor area, I was thinking that I would fit in more as a social work professor who started with that career and then moved on to working with the laborers, starting with the tea plantations, and for a short stint of working as director for Bethel, where I had opportunities to work with the downtrodden and also in emancipation of some bonded laborers. And of late, I have been involved in some social transformation consulting, where I am trying to help the bonded laborers to come out of the clutches, which I still feel are prevailing in some parts of India. Thank you very much once again for giving me this opportunity to speak in this panel, which is of repute. And I would now get on to my subjects of bonded labor from a social work perspective. As I was introduced by Dr. Joshia, I had worked on the social work profession, both as an academician, a writer of articles in most of the edited books on social development, and as consultant for social transformation in NGOs as well as in CSR initiatives by some of the companies. And moreover, I had an opportunity to live in the community which we are talking about today at length. And I have heard stories from my grandmother who hails from Mailadi. And that's where the emancipation initiative started. As we go along, we would be coming across of stories which are emerging from that place about the women not being allowed to cover their upper part of the body just because they belong to a marginalized community. And my uncles who were asked to work on labors which are not intended for their competence just because they had been constrained to that system. And also, I've heard about stories about how the great grandfathers fought along with Vedamani, who we are going to talk about today, and also some of the Christian missionaries like Ringeltop, and came out successfully after giving quite a lot of fight to abolish bonded labor in those ages in which they lived. And from that perspective, I would be approaching this topic from 2 angles, one from the historic perspective and another from the social work perspective. Bonded labor is a social system, though we often think about bonded labor as an exploitation. But if you look at the contributions by the sociologist in analyzing the bonded labor, we can understand that it's a social system, a system which was socially accepted, a system which was legally enforced, a system which was even theologically justified. It is so surprising that this bonded labor system was sustained by an interlocking structure of caste hierarchy, economic dependency, and social norms. When we go through the recordings of most of our Christian social reformers who had worked on this system, we find that this is a self-reinforcing system of inequality, which was accepted by them and adopted by them for some convenience which they felt, which was not realistic. But the system over the period had made them feel that it's convenient to continue with that system so that the life goes on. However, the Christian reformers in the 17th century and in the 18th century educated and brought awareness that accepting a system like bonded labor is not their destiny. They need to come out of it and live a life like anyone else just because they are human beings. In sociology, we call it as cognitive liberation, which means the ability to question, why should I be like this? And why should not be I become one like you? And taking these positions required the awareness, the support of advocacy, and also a liberation which should come through a legal framework. As we go along, we would see the local communities became agencies, as we call in sociology, which means they choose to engage, adapt, and use resources which are available to them, even at that compelling situations and constraints to challenge the system. The interaction between the structure and the agency will lead to a social transformation. This is in a nutshell of what we are going to see today as what Christian reformers have contributed over the period of a century. Bonded labor across India existed under many names. In Kerala, they call it as Ulyam. In Tamil Nadu, they called it as Pannayal or Pannayar or Pannai Adiyal or Adiyal. In Andhra, they called it as Vetti Chakri. And in Bihar, they call it as Kamuti, Harwahi. And in North India, in places like Punjab, UP, Rajasthan, they call it as Beggar, Hali, Sagri, and whatever name you call it. If you look at the communities who are getting engulfed into the system, they are all the downtrodden community or the marginalized community by caste. It's a hereditary system of compulsory unpaid labor. You may call it in different names in different regions, but it's a structure which has the same framework. And the framework is that you are born into it, your children inherited it, there is no right of refusal, and there is no way of exit. And if you see, this has become an easy way out for the people to exploit those who are caught up in the system without even being questioned by anyone. It was justified as a caste ideology, the belief that some people were born to serve. In sociology, we may call it as a structural inequality. We may call it as a control of labor by dominant classes, which is a conflict theory. Or we may call it as an ascribed status, which has come in because you're born in that caste. Now, if you look at the numbers which we are going to see, it may go in lakhs. But when I am looking at the numbers, if you see in Kerala, there are around 130,000 state-owned slaves documented in 1949. But it's not numbers. They are fellow human beings like us. And when I see that they are fellow human beings, then I understand the importance of our forefathers documenting it and liberating them. There are so many bonded laborers, more than 1 million in Tamil Nadu, even in 1995, after so many years of talking about liberating them legally. These are not numbers, these are human beings. So the journey continues as we see that the job is not done. And we see that the people are asked to work in all kinds of jobs, buildings, maintaining roads, canals, thatching government sheds, carrying palanquins, rowing royal ceremonial boats. Families were even called for weeks during harvest without any rest. They were involved in supplying provisions for the people who are engaging them, all unpaid. And they can't ask for anything except for the food that they were provided. They live as bonded labor, and there is no exit. It took around a century for our Christian reformers to work with them and to bring them out of these clutches. And even today, when I had an opportunity to work with tea plantations, I could see that the great-grandfathers of some of the workmen were brought as bonded labor from places like Bodhi and Theni to Munnar. And they tell us stories about how they are exploited. And I have read a book which was published by UPASI, which is United Planters Association of South India, called Plantation Panorama, where they talk about how these laborers were bought during the years 1850s, 60s, 70s, and they were made to work. But when I had an opportunity to work with there, all the good works which were done by us, the Christian reformers and our forefathers, had shown them the light of the day, and they were out of it, and some of them got educated, they become staff, and some even as managers who could engage the laborers whom their forefathers were in. As we see, we need this social transformation process through a consciousness building. There is a collective action required, and there is an institutional reform required. We have some examples like Vedamanikam, the name which says the jewel of the scriptures, who was born in South Travancore, who was also one of the victims of the bonded labor system, which we just talked about in Kerala in the Uliyam. But born Maharasan, as we call him, became a Christian follower, took the name Vedamanikam. So in 1915, together with the Thanasis, he formally petitioned to Maharani Gauri Parvati Bai that the labor should be abolished, they should be free, they should enjoy the rights of everyone, with evidences which he documented over a period of time. The earliest documented legal challenges of Uliyam obligation came from Travancore, and most of the contributions were from Vedamanikam. This petition led to the first proclamation of granting exemptions from forced labor. We are talking about this documentation even today, as we heard from the opening remarks, how important it is to carry on with this, to see that our rights are achieved as we pass on with the same clutches in the years to come, and looking for a day when we would get our rights as it has been envisaged in our constitution. The method of changing this system is documenting injustice for seeking redress. That's what Vedamanikam did. We have another one who is our own George Mathen Reverend, who is the first ordained native Anglican priest in South India. He served in Travancore in the mid-19th century. He's a scholar, a reformer, an investigator, a profound writer. He documents everything. And because he had evidences in documents, he was commissioned by the government to investigate why the 1853 Emancipation Proclamation was being ignored. There was a proclamation that the bonded labor should be abolished. People should be freed from the clutches of being engaged by their dominant owners, but it was not practiced. In social work, we talk about a concept called cultural lack. It's easy to bring out a law, but it's very difficult to make people aware of it and make them conscious about their rights and make them claim it and use it to get freedom. There is a lag between these two. And that's what he found out because he had meticulously recorded what is happening. And he called that proclamation as a dead letter. He used that strong word, which opened the eyes of the leaders of that day, and it brought the new law or the ordinance in June 24, 1855, which is the proclamation and abolition of slave ownership. What we learned from this is, as an insider documenting injustice within all social system, evidence that the legal system need not always be the lived reality. And more so, we understand that we can have our own Christian missionaries and reformers in India who can do this job rather than looking outside our system to find our own answers for our problems. They were helped by many other people. And as we see, the support came from John Monroe, Ringeltaub, Jebin Manohar, who were all in power to help these people to record, speak, and fight for their rights, which helped them to come out of the system. Similar way, we had Thomas Gabriel and Araguntla Pereya from Andhra Pradesh, who documented this bonded labor and emancipated them. It took quite some time for us to achieve what we got as liberation today through our constitution. And today, we have Article 23 of the Indian Constitution, which prohibits traffic in human being and beggar, and other similar forms of forced labor, but it took a century of sustained advocacy, bringing a social change. To conclude, it is awareness, advocacy, and action that could liberate us from any of these bondages. And that was true in bonded labor abolition in our country, to which our Christian social reformers had documented evidences and supported it, which is the need of the hour and which we need to continue even now as the job is yet to be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sam Jebin Manohar, for that very informative and very systematic presentation on the topic bonded labor abolition. You highlighted cognitive liberation, the agency to be used, and to oppose one system with many names. And also, you very systematically highlighted how it took a century, the struggle to convert into something, the right which people could get, the collective action required, and also awareness, advocacy, and collective action by challenging the system and also documenting and legally applying it so that the constitution can be achieved or the rights could be achieved by these people. Thank you so very much for that very moving and very powerful sharing, Dr. Sam.